Well, good evening and welcome to the May 2nd, 2017 annual budget hearing. Special meeting on the Hoboken Board of Education. We also have on our agenda a few items that the superintendent has put on tonight's agenda just to take advantage of our meeting here. Some timely things that need to be looked at and approved if possible tonight. Mr. Moffitt?
Yes, I'll read the statement of compliance. This meeting is being held in conformity of the Open Public Meeting Act. Proper public notice of the meeting was published in the local newspapers on April 21st, 22nd, 23rd, 29th, and 30th, the year 2017. If any board member or member of the public in attendance believes that this meeting is in violation of the Open Public Meeting Act, the Hoboken Board of Education requests that they make a statement at this time. The board wishes to make those in attendance aware that this meeting is being recorded on video and will be broadcast by the board at a later date on cable television channel 77 and FiOS channel 46. The full meeting recording will be made available on board docs, which can be accessed through the district's homepage. The Hoboken Board of Education is committed to preserving the decorum of the public process and is mindful that we live in an electronic age of computers, cell phones, and other electronic communication devices. Nevertheless, we respectfully request that all meeting participants kindly silence their electronic devices during the course of the meeting, and if use of the device is necessary, we ask that you please leave the meeting room to conduct personal business. If you please rise for the salute flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And call the roll, please.
Ms. Angley?
Here.
Mr. Biancamano?
Present.
Ms. Delera?
Here.
Ms. Evans?
Here.
Mr. Madigan?
Here.
Mr. McNamara?
Here.
Ms. Sobolov?
Here.
And Mr. Kluffeld.
Here. So we have a quorum. And the point of tonight's meeting is it's the public budget hearing. Mr. Moffitt, I'll turn it over to you. You're making the presentation?
Sure, if someone could turn it on, I'd appreciate it. Thanks, Rich. Well, it's that time of year, once again, that we come together and present the budget information to the general public, also known as the public hearing on the budget. I'll just wait for the power. Now, where we are in the adoption of the budget process, we're obviously coming to the closure on this issue. Tonight we are presenting the budget information as approved by the New Jersey Department of Education, Hudson County office, and other staff members. That approval allows us to advertise information that's included in our budget. The only major change from the preliminary budget to this point has been the request by the department to adjust how we handled the federal entitlement grants within our budget. We had it about 100% of what we expected. They felt with all the political disclosures and some of the discussions at the federal level to use 85% rather than 100%, so we did that. That doesn't really affect most of the budget that we'll be talking about tonight, because the federal grants aren't part of our operating budget, so what is supported by our taxes didn't change, so the operating budget is supported by the tax levy. So moving on from there, we'll be presenting the information tonight, and we have a scheduled regular meeting to be held on May 9th, and the board will be taking action on adopting that budget, which will be discussed tonight. A little overview of our presentation. So we're going to go to global issues, then into some planning, micro issues, then we'll cover appropriations and end on revenue and tax levy information. So part of the overarching budget factors that we dealt with in this creation of this budget had to do with some of what we've spoken about and had presenters, specifically our external auditor, reported out. We obviously end on June 30. Our financial statements, we get audited, and then the auditors present that to the board later in that calendar year, normally around December. Lurch Fincy Higgins did present that and confirm that we are in a better financial condition overall as of the end of June 30, 2016. So that helps go into the 17-18 budget. So we had an improved financial condition. We have a healthy general fund surplus, which is targeted for about 2%. We are in a position to continue to preserve or build our maintenance reserve to protect the district from any problems with building repair or maintenance projects that may come up. We also are in a position to continue to build and maintain a capital reserve, which is also used to develop our infrastructure, if you like to say. Allows us to make renovations, upgrades, and expansions that the School Development Authority does not address immediately. So we were able to utilize that this year. We'll go over that later on in the slide presentation. Another characteristic or something that is a positive going into this cycle has to do with the continued improvement of our food service operations and put us in a position to not only eliminate the accumulated debt, but also allows us to continue to eliminate bad debts as we move forward. So that's a condition that is favorable to us. And we are also continued on the trend that will improve our reliance on revenue, our revenue stream, specifically as it relates to our general fund balance. Again, it's a surplus number. It's money that we use from prior years. For this year, it's a one-shot source of revenue, and we're getting less dependent on that. So we continue that strategy on working us down from that revenue stream. So we'll be doing that. We'll be covering that later on in the slide presentation as well. Some other budget factors that we were prepared for, or at least expecting some information from the Department of Education. So let's review the cycle. Our fiscal year ends in June, so we start confirming our budget for the future year. So over the summer, our 12-month staff members show up. We make sure they're carried in a budget. We wait until September until our 10-month employees show up to confirm where they need to be in our budget. We are always looking at areas within our operation where we may have to move some resources, either teachers or classrooms, what may be developed over the summer. We're able to adjust that. So it's a whole process that starts over the summer, and we wait until we get information from basically the governor's budget message in February 28th to be exact, which would get some additional information. So to go back to the slide, we were expecting an increase in the charter school payment, so that was a budget concern that we had. We felt that in some of our internal reorganization and how we deliver pre-K education in the district, we did understand that we would be transitioning some to that rental arrangement. So we're going to be adding space to our preschool providers and subtracting some space from our existing tenants at the time. We also knew that we were going to be considering moving the middle school to the Demmer School building. We were also exploring additional whiteboard technology textbook series as well. The other item that we were expecting, I don't want to say gloomy or just confirm what we kind of expected, which was state aid. That's a big conversation annually about basically how much are they going to give us. Is it going to be an increase in state aid or decrease, or going to be flat funding? In this case, it was eventually flat funding, but we kind of were prepared for either flat or reduced funding. But these are all concerns that we had on the front end of the budget process. The major cost drivers we knew and were maintained. There's two big ones, which had to do with the increase in district salaries from year to year. We did have a couple contracts finalized, and we knew what those movements were on either the guide or across on percentage. And we also knew that there were some changes on how the district handled health care reimbursements from employees. So those were two pretty big planning areas that we already knew that we were adjusting for as we went into the budget cycle. Now, generally, when we go through the budget, we prepare, as I alluded to earlier, not only are we rechecking where the salaries are in the budget, we're looking at historical trends in areas of expenditure as far as supplies, material, if we need some more custodial supplies or maintenance repair type supplies. Those are things that we watch pretty closely. And we can look historically to see if next year is an up year, is it something that's slowly declining? And as we find areas that may be declining and we could adjust and find those resources, we can then move them into areas that we may need it over time. Some of the, obviously the increases will then, really what I'm saying is the increases will set off decreases. So those are some macro levels. Those of you who have sat through this before, it's going to look very similar to last year, and that's basically because the cycle in my office is pretty much the same. It's across the state of New Jersey, we're all watching this information, and it's pretty standard across the state. So with the salary, as I stated, we did know that we had two contracts that are out to 2019. There is one coming due in 2017-18 fiscal year. That'll be the Hoboken School Employees Association, so that's something that we concerned ourselves with. The district is a district-wide review. Specifically, the superintendent will review our deployment of some of our staff members, adjust on the fly as far as if we have a larger kindergarten class, meaning more kindergartners showed up towards the end of the school year, we'll move staff around and create classrooms. So those are things that we watch pretty closely. And we also look to see what we have currently to maintain that delivery and programs and services, which we were able to do this year. And then we confirm spending. What that really means is we encourage all of our school locations to spend and commit their funds early in the year so that we know where their spending is at when we sit and do the budget. So when we sit with them, usually in January, December, in this case, really January, we sit down and make sure that all their graduation expenses are in so that we know the base budget for 17-18. Some unique things that we are here in Hoboken. Hoboken Public Schools was identified at one time as a Abbott district. It's now considered to be a former Abbott district SDA district. But that comes with some regulatory complications, I'll call it, because I really do feel it's somewhat complicated. It has to do with school-based budgeting, and what I mean complicated is the way we handle it, not only within the budget, but also our accounting system. School-based budgets are required in all prior Abbott districts where the resources closest to the school and student are isolated in what is called the school-based budget. So they will carry salaries for teachers, nurses, principals, instructional supplies, material for those classrooms at the school level, and some small resources as it relates to custodial supplies and needs. So they're isolated. It complicates the way it looks in a newspaper. We'll go over that a little bit later because they divide. School-based budgets are a portion of our total structure. So what we call school-based budgets are Fund 15, and then we have our general operating budget, which is our central office budget, is known as Fund 11. So you have to really add those two together to get a better picture of what we do here in Hoboken. Second area is, as a former Abbott, we're required to provide certain programs, after-school programs, student field trips, outreach, full-day kindergarten. Those are required currently in regulation. We're also required to provide a preschool program for our students here, again, as a requirement from the outgrowth of the Abbott v. Burke series of court cases that had come out between the state and the Education Law Center. And finally, the School Development Authority, that is an agency, a state agency that basically controls how we expand, or at least authorizes certain expenditures as it relates to renovations, repairs to our facilities. As I said, at V. Burke, the state of New Jersey was held responsible for some of our facility needs, and they do have control over a lot of those areas. We do have options as far as reserves and certain renovations, which we've done this past summer, but they do have final sign-off. But again, it's something that other districts don't normally have. The regular operating districts do not have that additional layer of regulation and approval. Enrollment assumptions. Every year we look to have a demographic to ground what we're doing for the school year. That's just a start point. That demographic has indicated a continuing increase in enrollment over the next 5 years, roughly about 200 students overall in the next 5 years. This year we expect about 82 students overall, which represents a 3.16% increase or growth rate. This isn't a static number. The superintendent and administration is constantly looking at updates along the way. As we get an indication of the kindergarten through the year, that's something that's constantly revisited once the budget is set into motion. So some of what we start with, as you see in this presentation, may be different, obviously, in September. But we'll take a shot at it. 82 students we feel will be hitting the district. Majority of them will be at the elementary school level. Specifically kindergarten about 7, about 74 in the 1 through 5 area. And the 2 other areas are relatively flat. As I look at the enrollment projections for our own district, I also concern myself with the enrollment projections coming in from the charter school. Now this doesn't come in clarity until the February date when is provided to us. What I mean about being provided to us, a lot of this information, although we understand there's a growth, we just don't know how much. The Department of Education is responsible for calculating with the charter schools as far as what their enrollment growth will be individually. There's information that we confirm, but the projections are actually approved by the Department of Education. They run the formula. In our state aid notice packet, we get an actual couple sheets that go over not only the enrollment, but also the corresponding increase or transfer payment to the charter school. So this year, since charter schools was anticipated to be a very large section of our budget, or a portion of our budget, they identified for us that about 71 students in total, and basically how that is arranged, and the increase by school is seen above. So the biggest increase is noted at Ola, which went up by 37 students, with the second largest increase is Hoboken Charter School. Now, what does that mean in dollars? You can see our total payment went up by a little over 9%, from about 9.3 million to over 10.1 million, which is a substantial increase for our budget, just as a percentage of our overall budget. But how that breaks out, again, Ola, the largest increase in their payment by the $476,403, with the second largest increase being Hoboken Charter School, again, $271,425. As you can see, the increase from year to year is $843,837, which is significant. And the reason it's significant is when I'm putting together the budget, I run these simulations and we try to see what we may have in current regulations. So what better reflects this, and the discussion we had with the board, is if we just did our increase on tax levy. Now the 2% increase is based on a percentage of our property tax, the tax levy. So if we just run a quick scenario, 2% of that was $850,000. On the left side, you'll see that pie chart to give you a flavor of where that 2% was going. So that first step where was it going? So as you can see, the largest portion of that was going to the charter schools. Obviously, you can see the HPS on the corner, which was less than 1%, but the majority of that initial 2% was going to charter schools. The one on the right, as you can see, is when we add in beyond the 2%, as current regulations are, you can add in adjustments, what they call adjustments, and again, it's acceptable to do enrollment growth, healthcare growth, and use of bank caps. So those are three things we had available to us this year. So we put that into this scenario, and if we utilize the full amount, if we added all those areas in, the enrollment growth, healthcare growth, and the bank cap, we get about 1.12, which I should say 1.19, which rounded up is 1.2. So that's that $1.3 million. So as you can see, we get a little bigger portion, obviously, because it's larger than $850,000, but that gives you a sense of where that money is really going. So at the preliminary budget session, we talked about really the Board of Ed section of Hoboken Public Schools is actually getting the 1.19%, not necessarily the full 3.19. So we wanted to be clear with that. But these are scenarios that we have to play out in our planning sessions, because we have to see where we potentially may have to go back, revisit the budget as we're working to reduce, to fit in those expenses that we have identified, like salary and health benefit increases. Now, it's pretty predictable, because not only is it $843,000 this year, as you could say, over the past 8 years, it has been a substantial increase from year to year. So it's something that we, as a business administrator, I can't ignore. That is going to be a big part of our increase from year to year. So we plan, and that's really the march over the time and the expansion. As you can see, it more than doubles from 2010. So it moves from 1.2-ish to a little bit closer to 10.2. So as we move through the process, once we kind of understand how large the increase to the charter schools are, then we go back to our own planning, right? So again, we look at our core mission. We want to make sure we have the educational foundation programs, language, math, art, science, that we're delivering that. We also look at and revisit how we allocate our staff in light of all these all the information that we know at the time. And we want to maintain any other additional programs that we may have, which is the art, music, and world language type programs that are not the basic core mission, but are additional special, I'll say specialized areas that we're fortunate enough to have here in the district. So as we move to schools, we look at the special education goals. So as I sit down with the director of special services, we go over the budget as it relates to out-of-district placements, resources available for evaluations, speech, occupational therapy, services that are required by the individual educational plan, which are required by regulation. So these are things that we have to make sure we have resources available, and that we revisit how we're projecting for those students as well, to make sure that with the overall increase, that we're also expecting an increase in that special ed population. And where will it be? Will it be an out-of-district placement? We're spending a lot of time making sure that we offer as many services here closest to the student as possible. There are occasions where we have to consider an out-of-district placement, but it's after we exhaust all options here in district. Again, they are required placements. The micro level, some other special education goals that we talk specifically about year after year, because it's about expanding programs locally. We continue to attempt to offer seats available to existing programs, or have students stay within the least restrictive environment, which is closer to home. So we talk about the ABA program, we talk about resource rooms and other resources that may allow us to provide that care and education here in district. Technology goals. Big part of technology is not only testing, that is obviously a big part of it nowadays because of PARC, but we also have the whole infrastructure requirement and administrative use of computers. So we make sure all those resources are available. And what I mean is if we need to network, we have network resources to maintain it and expand it at times. They're not the glorious items, as fun as hanging tablets and small laptop computers, but it is something that we need to have in place before we can light up the rest of the network. So those are areas that we visit. We look at expanding the capacity of our existing staff by leveraging third parties, as well as expanding our maintenance capabilities. It's something to maintain not only the infrastructure, meaning things in the wall like the drops, networking cables and those type of things, but also our skill set to maintain that over time. We also look to support the technology plan, and that's something that we're required to have, and we make sure that we have resources available to implement any type of increases as far as the number of tablets, switches, and other type of technology. The big item this year happened to be the expansion of our Chromebooks. They seem to be a very popular item with a lot of our instructional staff and school staff. And it's a mobile cart scenario where we are able to acquire a cart and group of Chromebooks. So that was something we were able to do, and we'll go over that a little bit more later. But that was something that we knew that there was a desire to have that across the district at all school levels. So that was something that we discussed at the technology area. Security goals, the same concept. We're just looking to maintain what we have, make sure the resources are there to support that. What we do with the security areas, we also apply for a grant year after year. It happens to be from our insurance carrier, where we're able to use those resources to expand our capacity. But we're always looking at that security area to make sure that we have resources and can expand capabilities. Facilities, the same thing. These are the less glorious areas, but they are obviously crucial to providing that learning environment. So in the facility area, we coordinate, make sure that we have all the resources and vendors set up to provide heat and ventilation, air conditioning, electric, water, alarm and safety systems, repairs of those systems. So a lot of the systems within our school, if they break down and need repair, this is the area we would do. In our capital budget or our operating budget, specifically our operating budget covers the required maintenance of our facilities. So we visit that, we make sure we have all of our staff aligned on the custodial side as well as the maintenance and repair. We have property insurance we have to make sure we budgeted for, and also try to coordinate any type of funds available from the SDA. Another positive, I had alluded to that earlier, had to do with our food service operation improving. We were able to break even. We're actually profitable last fiscal cycle. So again, that positioned us into a position where we were able to break some resources free. So in that last bullet item, we were at a $200,000 reserve at one point, and we've been able to whittle that down to 50 because of the improvement in our operations. So that was something that we knew going into the budget cycle, as well as we knew we eliminated that accumulated budget deficit as it related to food service. So all of that, and it gets us to where are we going and where did the increases come from, and we'll get to that, but I'll just give you a global overview. So when you look at our general fund, again, our general fund is our operating day-to-day budget, supported by your tax levy, the property taxes, and that increased about $1.3 million, which represents about a 2.41% over the prior year. Of that 1.3, about 482,000 roughly, it was really available to the Hoboken Public Schools to utilize in the budget process. So that was definitely challenging this year. It was something that we were able to go back and basically maintain the footprint that we had and that we had established at the beginning of the school year in September. We were able to maintain that. We couldn't really expand it to the degree that we wanted to because of the constraints budgetarily, but we were able to maintain what we had. And part of the budget highlights. I'm going to transition this over to the superintendent to elaborate on the large array of items that are currently covered by the budget as it relates to the maintenance program staffing and other items within the budget. Dr. Johnson? Yep.
All right, so the proposed 2017-2018 budget maintains many of the programs that we developed and implemented this school year. However, it also includes some new initiatives. We're proud to say that the budget that's proposed does include all of our current staffing, so it does not indicate any cuts in staff whatsoever. There will be no reduction in teaching staff or support staff for that matter. This particular budget also supports the continuation of Project Lead the Way, which is our STEM program that's offered and available to all children 5 days a week at all of our grade levels, and an expanding Project Lead the Way program at the high school. This particular budget not only includes the components of Project Lead the Way that we have this year, but also the implementation of new courses for next year, so that when we expand the biomedical sciences program and the computer science program, as well as the engineering program at the high school, each year that we continue it, we add additional pieces to the program until it gets to its full capacity. Right now, we're only offering year 1 courses, but we'll be offering year 2 courses, and so on and so forth. Once we get to the 3rd year of the implementation of Project Lead the Way, we will then be able to cross over into the correlation and connection between Project Lead the Way and the Advanced Placement Program, which would enable us to actually offer the AP Capstone program. So that will happen on the 3rd year of the implementation of Project Lead the Way. This budget also includes the implementation, or the continuation, I should say, of our Princeton Review SAT Prep program. We see all of the results and the statistics from the practice assessments in that particular class, and we are seeing some improvements along the way with our juniors that are actually enrolled in that course. We have almost 70 students that are engaged in the Princeton Review SAT Prep program. We will continue the Passport to Learning after school program, although it's important for everyone to know that the work that we did here in the district, as well as the Parent Advisory Committee, we kind of pooled the funding for Passport to Learning through multiple sources. So although it might not necessarily be funded out of Fund 11 or out of the school-based budgets, it is funded via the federal grants that you will see in the budget that are identified as revenue. So that's where that comes out of. The budget also continues to support our summer theater program, as well as the summer music program, so we're very excited about that. Back to the after-school program, based on our grants and some shifting of the use of the funding for the grants, it will also enable us to operate our after-school program at the 7th and 8th grade level for next year, giving our middle school students the opportunity to participate in both enrichment, extracurricular athletics, or I should say really intramural athletics, as well as some academic support in addition to that. The budget, I'm happy to report, also includes all of our related arts programs. So none of our related arts programs have been eliminated from this budget. In fact, they're continuing. So our art program and our music program, as well as our world languages program, and so on and so forth. None of those things have been eliminated from this budget, as well as our co-curricular programs that we see both in our teacher's contract and those activities that we've been offering this year as and over the years as well. So they'll be in there. And then in addition to that, we have also made a commitment to not only continuing our Gifted and Talented program, but also expanding the Gifted and Talented program. So this particular budget includes not only the Johns Hopkins courses, Stanford EPGI courses, Khan Academy courses, but it also includes a number and a range of new elective courses and honors-oriented courses at our high school level as well. At the high school, just to give you an idea of some of the modifications and changes that we're making, we have committee meetings tomorrow, so our curriculum committee will actually be presented with in full the new high school program of studies. That new high school program of studies includes a number of really exciting new courses. It includes also a focused center for global learning, which will include a number of new courses and activities for kids. It will also include some courses and activities in the area of leadership and mindfulness. It will include some new online courses and dual enrollment collegiate high school courses for kids that happen both on-site and also through a virtual portal so that our high school kids can take those classes as well. It also includes the expansion of a number of new advanced placement courses that will be offered through a system called Eduseer. Because we're a small high school and we're only able to offer probably max of maybe 12 advanced placement face-to-face courses. What we found is a lot of small high schools actually offer an expansion of advanced placement courses through online programming, so we're doing it through a organization and a company called Eduseer. That will give us the opportunity to expand those advanced placement courses up and beyond 20 classes. So our kids can pick from them. And at the middle school level, as you know, we're moving the middle school to Demarest, so our 7th and 8th grade children will be here. This budget includes the facilities projects that are needed to get the middle school up and running and ready to go. It also incorporates all of the new program developments for the middle school. So just like we're going to have and present a new high school program of studies, we're doing the same thing for the middle school. It also provides an opportunity for us to add additional time for mathematics for our students. It maintains our science and our Project Lead the Way double block, and like I said before, the after-school program. At the elementary school level, there's all kinds of initiatives that we have going, but I think probably the most important thing to report out is that we are in a cycle to overhaul our mathematics curriculum and our math programming. We'll also be extending our literacy program. We will be moving or expanding our Brant Elementary School from kindergarten and first grade to include kindergarten, first and second grade. We will also be implementing a new 5th and 6th grade advanced mathematics program to ensure that our students in the area of mathematics at those 2 grade levels are prepared for the track that will run our mathematics students through algebra at the middle school level, preparing them for geometry at the entry into high school, so that we will ensure that all children leave 8th grade prepared for algebra or have completed algebra prior to entering the high school. And then finally, our school-wide enrichment program at the elementary school will be expanded pretty intensively with a new battery of enrichment courses that will be offered once a week on Fridays to all children in a self-selected capacity. So those are the educational initiatives that we're committed to and that have been included in the proposed 2017-2018 budget.
Okay. So As I said, there was an increase in the overall appropriation, so I would like to, at this moment, just to point out the documents that you have in front of you as a board member. I have a reprint of the legal ad, which is the information that you're going to see here in the presentation. We just loaded it in, and this goes back to what I said. I probably say this multiple times during the presentation, but definitely year after year. The user-friendly budget is not as user-friendly as we'd like it. Specifically as it relates to former Abbott districts, and it goes back to having a school-based budget portion and a central office portion. So what you see here above you today in that slide happens to be just the general central office budget. It does not include the school-based resources. You're going to see that on the next page. But what you'll see is a couple things. One is that you see a reduction in the central office budget because some of those resources are going to be either eliminated or reduced or transitioned into the school-based budgets. So a lot of that transpired this year, but you don't necessarily see it. We're going to have a slide in a couple minutes which will kind of put it in a perspective with 11 and 15 together. But as far as appropriations, this is a portion of it. Again, these are all, if you look at the top, that's our instructional area. You see some reductions there, substantial reductions. Again, you're going to see a comparable increase in the school-based resources. But where that comes is this next page, which is what I was saying earlier about how confusing it can be. If you look at the top 3 lines, the one on the bottom says general fund contribution to school-based budget. So that number is the total amount of resources currently in school-based budget. So that includes the middle school budget, which was brand new for this year, high school budget, Brant, Connors, and Wallace. They're all in there. That total, which includes salary and non-salary expenditures or appropriations, is close to $26 million. And that's an overall increase within Fund 15, school-based budgets of close to 9%. Some of the things you see below that having to do with the grants from not only the state, but also the federal government. So you're going to see that $13,559,452. That is the total preschool program budget. So it's over $13.6 million for pre-K students in town. You see other flow-through dollars that would be going to non-public and parochial schools within the boundaries of Hoboken. And then you see federal projects and IDA type resources. So you have NCLB, which is Title I, II, and III, and you also see IDA. And again, that's on the bottom section of that. And it's the true budget. If you see the $72 million number, that is the true total budget, not the 71. The 71 is just they adjust for this portion that comes from our taxes and is transferred into the early childhood program. So that's an amount that the department identifies that would offset special education requirements at that pre-K level. So that's what they adjust for. Again, all off of the Fund 11, which is central office budget, inclusive of the charter school, capital outlay, and contributions to school-based budget. So that's that $56 million. So when people ask me, well, Bill, what's your budget, what's your operating budget? I use $56 million. That's what we operate on. Everything else is subject to changes from year to year and are usually self-contained and are considered to be restricted type programs. The $56 million is less restrictive and open to our control. Or I should say, better our control. Now this is the pie chart. So what we did internally, we added 11 to 15 as it just relates to our operating budget, and that $56 million number is broken out according to this pie chart. So you see the majority of the expenditures. You see obviously the large percentage of about 18% for charter schools, but the rest of the pie you'll see regular programs in total, both added together, right? So central office and school-based budgets in total. Regular programming, which would be our regular education component, is about $15 million. Another large section is the employee benefits. We have co-curricular, it's across the board. Now I just want to point out there's this green sliver on the side here, on the right side, which we'll go to the next slide, they're all expenditures or appropriations that are less than 2%. But again, if you work around from charter schools, so regular program instruction is about 15%, school-sponsored athletic activities and co-curricular, a little over 2%, again, it's $1.3 million. Student transportation is a component, $1.4 million. Child study team, these are all required as part of our special ed and evaluation of all students. Required maintenance is there, support services, instruction as it relates to tuition. Now tuition, these are these out-of-district placements. It's a little bit misleading in a sense that it's not our total amount. If you look, it's going to be a component of our IDEA grant, which covers some of our tuition, plus this amount, which is our out-of-district tuition appropriations, other support service, custodial, and some other special ed instruction. That special ed instruction on the bottom is our own internal programs. So that little pie, small sliver, the green pie size, that's again, it's broken out in another graph. Wish I could see a little better, a little bit harder to see without the light. But we'll look at you have central services administration, about 1.4%. You have educational media, which is the librarian and media specialist area of our operation. Capital projects, that's about 1%. Improvement of instruction, security costs, and around the corner there. You will see a little bit for food service. That relates to the reserve that we have. Just want to point that out. Staff training is also provided for. Again, it's a better way to look at both 11 and 15 together rather than the way it was presented in the legal ad and our user-friendly budget. So the resources in use, where did the money come from? Where did the resources come from, and where was it used in our budget? The $1.4 million increase in the tax levy increase is there. You have some small adjustments, a small decrease in our general fund balance. Again, that's surplus from a prior year used for this year as a one-time revenue source. That was down a little bit as we wean ourselves off that as a district. We had a little increase for the tuition. We expect a couple more students this year. And then there's some small other changes as it relates to rental income and some miscellaneous revenue. Again, it's about $1.3 million in resources. And where was it used? Again, to go back, the charter school payment absorbed about $843,837 in total, which left $482,703 for what the district was to utilize. It's a little misleading there too, because what you don't know is all the hard work that the administration goes through to reduce the budget to fit all the cost drivers in. So as identified earlier in the presentation about salary increases and changes in health reimbursements, that all had to fit in there. So we had to pretty much fit about at least $1.6 million in known cost driving as far as expenditures into the budget. So if you actually look at what we did, we had to actually make reductions on things that we wanted and we couldn't afford this year. We made about $2 million in changes and reductions from what was submitted and what we wanted at the beginning. So it's a lot of work to squeeze that into a budget and also maintain our footprint as it relates to the delivery of instruction in the district and everything that the superintendent covered in the slides previous. Another area that can be a little confusing, I put a slide together, if we go back to, just to give you a little, now you see on the third from the top, what we talked about, the 26 million, it's about 24 million prior year. So in some of the publications and the ad, they use this amount, and I just wanted to at least address it so it didn't confuse anybody. So when you look from year to year, the change in some of the documentation is 2.4 million, which was the revised 16-17 budget against the 17-18 proposed. There's an increase, but again, that increase represents shifting from the central office budget into school-based budgets. So I just wanted to make that clear. It's not that it gets potentially brand new money, it's just money that would potentially shift from the central office into school-based budgets. Again, it's identifying, and something we've done in the business office over the last couple of years is trying to identify resources that needed to be in those school-based budgets, because we want to keep them as close to the delivery of that instruction as possible, so we know, we get a better picture of what we're expending on our educational programs. Again, an overview, we were able to increase or absorb the increase in the charter schools. We were able to absorb the contractual increases, and then we were able to provide one new position as far as an administrative position in the middle school and maintain all our existing programs. One area of appropriations that the Board of Ed over the time I've been here and prior to my arrival has been following and controlling legal costs and appropriations over time. So I wanted to put this together. It's something we've been following the last couple of years. It's a slide that's been here. I wanted to point out the last two bars on the right side. The 2017 projected, which right now is a good news story. If we project out from the existing trend, it looks like we'll project out to about $120,000 expended by the end of the year. That's below what we had targeted last budget period, which is about $210,000. So there's a difference of about $94,000 that's potentially going to be available to us this year for redistribution. But not only does it help us in 2017, but it was also helps us decide on moving that number down to about 150 for this year's target. As you can see, it's a nice downward trend over the past several years. Administrative costs, we're asked from time to time, how is our spending in regard to administrative services. The Department of Education, as we enter the data, just a little bit about the data, we have information we take from our own financial system and we put it into the Department of Education software. That software then will calculate various different statistics and they preload information. What they do is they provide us a regional limits as it relates to administrative costs. There's a north, central, and south indicator that's preloaded, and then they basically take our information, calculate it, and compare what we are to that regional limit. I'm happy to report that we were below the regional limit by $12, so you have about $2,191 for the regional limit, and we come in this year at $2,179. Again, these are numbers that are calculated for us by the Department of Education within the software. Lease purchase agreements, a big part of our capital expenditures, our Fund 12 or our capital. We had a lease purchase that is running off this year. Next year it'll become available to us to utilize the savings, if you may say, or at least the $200,000 that was available to pay is an option for us to utilize in the 18-19 budget. What we have there this year is we have at the very bottom the lease purchase amount of $201,482 in this budget, 17-18, and then these are improvements that were made several years ago as part of a lighting upgrade and energy savings program. Again, it was a district-wide initiative. The other new lease purchase that we had hit in this budget period had to do with a lot of the renovations that we made over the summer in 2016. We had a couple options on the table. We decided to move forward as a board with a lease purchase application. It was in total about $1.9 million. It was split over two lease purchases. One was an equipment and one was what they call a ground lease. So that was about $450,000. The equipment portion was $1,450,000. That total combined lease purchase payment in the 17-18 budget is $145,054. And that'll stretch out to 2022. Now, that lease purchase was used to make various renovations, which are highlighted here. We renovated the junior, senior high school auditorium, created science and robotics labs at the high school. We renovated the Wallace Gym, created 2 new science labs in Wallace. We replaced the Brandt floors, created 2 new science labs there. And we were able to re-turf the John F. Kennedy Stadium. That's all part of that project that was funded by that lease purchase application. So you have an old one running off, this year, and the new one coming on with next year $200,000 available. The whole capital outlay budget, just a little quick overview. I'll just point out in the appropriation grid there, the $316,428, it relates to both the lease purchase applications that we just talked about. But in total, we're budgeting this year for a Connors HVAC project, a similar HVAC project at the high school. We're looking to do the high school pool ceiling. Again, we're going to try to hit that the Wallace interior stairwell project. And we have equipment, computer equipment built in for about $50,000. Debt service, it's a big portion. It's a separate tax levy. We don't have any this year. We haven't had it for the last couple of years. The last time we had it, 2013-14, and it was just funds that we raised prior to any major construction. It had to do with tank remedial projects for the district. And again, it's not part of our budget presentation. It's not part of the tax request by the board. Other areas of the budget beyond our operating budget, or the general fund budget, has to do with the pre-K program. As stated, it's directly funded by the Department of Education, except for that $344,000 that we transfer in. It is required for Abbott districts to provide that. It's a preschool education program for 3- and 4-year-olds. It is approved. We submit every year a plan, and then they award the revenue piece. That whole plan is $13.6 million roughly. Again, not every district is required to do that. Just prior Abbott's as a school-wide. It's not targeted or any of that. It's just district-wide. All right, federal programs, as I alluded to earlier, the Title I, Title III, which was at one time considered to be No Child Left Behind. Others know it, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. The resources available in that plan, again, this is that area where we went from 100% down to 85%. So 85% of what we think we're going to get is about $914,791 in the first bullet. And then the portion for individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, again, it's at 85% amount what we think we're going to get, $561,243. And again, most of that is used for our out-of-district tuition appropriation and cost. We'll hit the revenue section. I'm trying to move it on. I don't want to go past that 45 minutes, which I think I blew by a little while ago. So revenue types, something that, again, we have local taxes, we have formula-based state aid. That's something that goes into our general fund. That's supposed to be, the Department of Education runs a formula. They haven't done it in 8 years. It's been flat funding. So I don't want to go into too much detail because they don't really run them anymore. They're supposed to take our demographics and then apply it to a formula. They don't. So that's unrestricted state aid. Then we have restricted state aid, which is at preschool program aid, non-public, the flow-through dollars, and then we have restricted federal sources, like we said, the NCLB and IDA. That's what our revenue picture looks like this year for 17-18. Again, local tax levy, and some of these numbers you'll be familiar with from the legal ad. Rent is $550,824. We have various facilities, or at least classrooms, that we rent out again to our preschool providers. State aid, which was flat at about $10.8 million, and then the federal aid along with the budgeted fund balance. The pie chart looks like that. The largest portion, as you can see, continues to be the local tax levy, which is increasing as a total percentage of our revenue year after year because of state flat funding scenarios. And that portion of our budget, which is the property tax, goes to all things in our general fund, our operating budget, which includes the charter school payment. As you can see, the next largest section is that state aid of $10.8 million. Again, this ties back into the ad. Yeah, the local tax levy up top, it's just arranged differently, a little more detail. It matches up to the legal ad. I'll go to page 2, just to go through it. It's all stuff we've covered. The one thing I will explain is that you'll see about $1 million on the third line has to do with carryover. So that's money that we don't use from one year to the other, we carry over for that program. So we were able to roll that in to the preschool education program. Their actual direct aid from the state of New Jersey is at $12.2 million. And then we have other funds that we take in at about $650,000. So if you look at the bottom, again, that goes back to what we talked about on the appropriation side, which is that $344,000 adjustment. Again, I just don't want to confuse you. That is a portion that's blended into the early childhood, the preschool program. All right, so those, I think I've already covered that. Just 3.19 is the total increase in the tax levy, flat state aid, some minor increases and decreases. Overall, we had about $1.3 million in resources. So increase in tax levy. So this is what the tax levy increases. So this is the increase in the taxes, 1,354,446 is the actual dollar increase from year to year. That includes adjustments for enrollment of 173 in the notation below. Includes a healthcare adjustment for 265,728 and use of the bank cap, which is the 61,970. That'll bring you back to that 3.19 number. Some statistics that you'll see in some of the publications, again, the ad as well, they calculate, the Department of Education calculates what they consider to be a minimum tax levy. And then what we used last year, what that means is we can't go below that moving forward, the higher of the two. So last year was $42.5 million. So you couldn't go below that as far as when you craft the budget. And the bank cap is something that's accumulated over a number of years and it expires. So it's something that I would like to point out. We're using the 61,970, which has been accumulated from past budgets. It's unused taxation authority, if I could say that, use the term. Once we use that we will have no bank cap left. So that'll bring us to zero as it relates to anything generated from 17-18. State aid, I think I'm beating a dead horse there. I think we all know they didn't pay much. And the fund balance projection, this is something that we try to plan for. We try to maintain, as I said, the general fund surplus at 2%, so we try to maintain that. We were at $1.3 million at the end of June 30, and that's after using the general fund budgeted amount, which is at the top part is at 691,530. This year we expect again to use the 639,281, which will put us back into that $1.2 million number. So we're projecting pretty much the same level. What does that mean? It means that we'll be looking to also make deposits this year. At the end of this fiscal year, the board will be considering deposits into most likely the capital reserve and potentially the maintenance reserve. So we should be anticipating that. And these are our targets when we talk about reserves. Again, the 2% unrestricted, it's at $1.2 million. Maintenance reserve is about $1.1 million, and that's based on 25% of our comprehensive maintenance plan. That approved maximum is 4.4, so 25 is obviously 1.1. And our capital reserve, we pinned it to our approved long-range facility plan, and that's about 10% is about $6.5 million. Again, these are targets. These are resources that we're going to have to consider moving forward as we address some of our facility requirements and due to programming needs. What everybody's been probably waiting for, like how does this affect me? So what we try to do is give you not only the average assessed home in Hoboken or residential. So we have 522 is the average. So the increased assessed on that assessed average home or residential unit is 80. Oh, sorry. There you go. There you go. All right. So the average assessed is 83.33 cents. That's on house assessed at $522,000, and we gave it the spread across the various values of homes. So if you have a $1 million property, what that would be. So it's as high on $1,159.63 to a property that's valued at, or it should say assessed at $400,000 is $63.85. And as you can see in the note, if you want to calculate it closer to your own, for every $100,000, it's $15.96. So we're coming to the end. Don't all run out here at once. Bad joke, I would be called, my kids would say that was a dad joke, so I apologize. So what's next? If adopted on May 9, we'll finalize the paperwork with the county office, the Department of Education. We're then able to then send information to the City of Hoboken for real estate tax collection purposes. We'll open up our budget mid-May to allow schools to start ordering for the new school year. And then if there's any changes in our grants or state aid, we're able to go in with approval of the department to make those slight changes. But that really concludes this presentation. And I think I'll open it up for questions the board that may have. I know we've discussed it, internally, but I don't know if there's anything related to the presentation that you'd like to ask me.
Board members.
Just on page 22, well, first of all, thank you. This is the first time we've ever had a presentation before our budget vote meeting, so thank you for doing that. And the board has been able to get together and meet with Mr. Moffett, so this is familiar to us at this point. But on page 22, I just wanted to clarify the general fund revenue of $56 million. That includes the $10 million for the charter schools.
Correct.
Right? Okay.
Yes.
So district-wise, the number that we can really control is approximately $46 million.
Correct. If you back that $10 million number out, yes.
Okay.
This side?
Chen. I also would like to thank you, Mr. Moffett, because I kept asking for a breakdown of the $56 million operating budget that we can control, and it looks like we have it tonight. Just for clarification purposes, out of that $56 million, $30 million go to salaries and benefits, correct?
Roughly.
Roughly.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I was also looking at this bar charts on page 7 for the charter school appropriations, where you mentioned that charter school funds went up $5 million or doubled from 2010, 8 years ago.
Yeah, right.
I also believe if you look at their enrollment has tripled during that time as well. That's number one. And I actually went back and I looked at what the operating budget was for the school district in 2010, and it was $46 million. So in essence, we also went up $10 million from our operating budget as well. So I just wanted to make the public aware of that because there was no bar chart showing how much the operating budget in the traditional school district was getting back in 2010 till today. And other than that, thank you for a thorough presentation.
You're welcome.
This side?
Yeah. Also, thanks for the presentation, both Dr. Johnson and Mr. Moffett. A couple of questions I had were, I think it was more related to the budget highlights than the other one. A lot of the tax increase seems to be going to the continuation of funding of new programs, rather than, I don't see on here sort of addressing some of the fundamental issues that were sort of maybe related to the school as I see it. So I think, for example, we highlight on the gifted education program offering additional online courses, but I didn't see anything about additional interventions in the classroom for that, like we did for a special education program. For the technology portion, I see expanding Chromebooks, but I don't see addressing critical network infrastructure problems like not being able to use the internet during testing periods or things like that. And I don't see anything addressing sort of fundamental changes to our food service program that sort of, with quality or offerings available. So I guess how are those addressed for sort of, is that addressed with non-tax increases and how do you look at sort of fixing the fundamental issues so we're not just continually talking about new programs and additive things?
So just to answer the, I guess, question globally, there are a number of I should say, new initiatives that are in fact being addressed in the budget. So for example, from a special education perspective, we have a few new classes that we're actually going to be opening next year that you don't see in the budget highlights because it's a shift in programming. So in other words, we have 2 courses that will address, I don't know what's going on here. We have a few classes that are going to address some of our students' behavioral challenges that we see from a special education perspective through courses that will integrate leadership development, behavioral modifications, and so on and so forth. So we're looking right now at 3 of those classes, but in order for us to do that, we're also looking holistically at our in-class support programming, which will thereby allow us to create those programs without adding new staff. Predominantly because there was a choice a few years ago to expand the in-class support and inclusion model, which at that time was probably the right thing to do. Now we're seeing some of the needs of our kids in a little bit of a different way, enabling us to shift some of those staff resources over to the new programs. So that's one example. The other example is last year we were able to add additional RTI reading teachers to support the some of the reading difficulties that some of our children were experiencing. So we added those teachers. We also, our intention was to add a mathematics RTI teacher as well. We added that position, however, we needed that position this year to cover a long-term leave that was a very difficult position to fulfill because it was a required math certification. We now have the ability to include that back into the budget as a staff position. So we will be including that in the budget as well. So that will take place. Also, all of our curricular and instructional items, so you'll see it in an area that's titled Improvement of Instruction. We did not decrease the overall improvement of instruction, meaning that our supplies and resources in those areas are maintained, giving us the ability to shift some pieces. So last year we developed a geography-based program, for example, for social studies that was being developed this year for the implementation of next year. So all of our materials were purchased that the teachers used, etc. Next year, that money is being shifted to social studies curriculum itself, so new textbooks, supplies, etc. We didn't have to add to it, we just shifted the resources because we already had the geography-based program. So we're kind of doing the same thing in each of the content areas, except for mathematics. That's like a complete overhaul. However, the other thing is this year we contracted services with something called Edmentum, which is a company that allows us to do online benchmark assessments and coursework for kids that need both challenge and support. So it enables us to see exactly where kids are and to assign programs for them through online learning, and that's for all kids. You already see that in the budget now, but that Edmentum program we've purchased enables us to expand modules to that. So we will be expanding modules to that particular program, but we're eliminating a contract from another provider that we used last year. So we did the shift from Star Renaissance to Edmentum, and that will enable us to do it. So we're trying necessarily, although you see in here just budget highlights, it looks like new. The things that we know we need for the existing curriculum, we're trying to actually do through, we address the need and then we shift the resources the following year to the new need as opposed to highlighting it. But we can create a Slide for You prior to next week. In fact, even I can present it to the Finance Committee tomorrow night and curriculum. That'll show what are the areas in the traditional curricular program that we're actually doing to assist in the improvement in those areas as well. Okay?
That'd be helpful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Quick comment. I just wanted to also say thank you for the presentation. And I liked some of the inclusion of the different, like the slide number 13 where the tax increase goes, because I've mentioned this in previous years, and it's actually one of the top questions that we get. It's very confusing, I think, to residents. You know, they see this board as a body, and they see the increased number as X, whatever it is each year, and it's kind of hard to explain where the different money goes. So I really appreciated the fact that the chart shows that the increase is covering the growth of the 4 districts. So I think that was clear, and I just think that makes it very helpful for the public, but very transparent. So I just wanted to say thanks for that.
Yeah.
Mr. Madigan.
If we could just check page 6, slide 11 and 12, I have a question. And it might not be under us. It might be under the charter schools. Under Elysian Charter School, it's saying
Excuse me,
it's...
Mr. Moffett, can you,
Sure.
you can see this, right? Okay.
Okay, on 11.
All right, I got it. There should be a better...
Okay, if we look at 11, Elysian Charter School, it looks it's going to add 11 students, am I correct?
Correct.
Okay. And when we go down to how much money they increase, it's 47,000, am I correct on that?
Correct.
Then we go to Hoboken Charter School, I don't know if that's me. No. Hoboken Charter School, and they're adding 22 students, and they're receiving $271,000, is that correct?
Yep. Yes.
Is that by us or by the state giving, like they're getting that much more than the Elysian Charter School, like the numbers are?
Yeah, if you're asking how is that projected, that's something between the charter school and the Department of Education.
Okay.
They submit information to the department in regarding the enrollment projections. They're confirmed by the department. The department uses that information to not only give us the information as far as what the enrollment growth is, but then they will also calculate the cost of that and the total transfer payment from Hoboken Public Schools to those various charter schools, right?
Then, slide 32, page 16. Question. Now
I said
down-
32, right?
Yes. Where it says resources on number 32, rental income decrease, 2,859.
Right.
That's all we're losing with the
Yeah,
charter school?
that's all we're losing, because we have some institution leaving, right? And then we have an increase as it relates to the preschool providers. And you have some growth from year to year. So you have we put in about 3% in the budget, and then the board then
Okay,
considers
I
their
wanna make sure
contract.
we weren't only charging them 2,000 for the whole year.
Yeah, no, that's
That
just,
was my question.
that's the net result
Yeah.
of it coming and going,
That was one of my
yeah.
questions, that we weren't only charging them 2,000, because I'd rent them.
Oh, yeah, no, that's actually, that
my
number,
apartment.
I was very happy with that number. We didn't want to lose a lot
Yeah,
of
that's what I'm
revenue,
saying.
so that was very good.
Quick question on page 18, slide 36. Well, let's start at 35 on the legal
We're
cost.
going to 35?
Yeah, on legal cost. Just an observation. Since the law firm didn't come tonight, that means we saved, correct? That no one came tonight, we saved?
Right.
Is that-
Since they weren't here, they won't bill us
They won't
for
bill
that.
us,
And I'll
okay.
make sure that they do not
Okay, that's
bill
what
us
I
for
wanna
tonight,
make
which
sure.
they
Now
will not.
36, slide 36. Now, I know it says we're less than other regionals here, but did our costs go up in administrative costs from last year to this year? Am I
Yeah,
reading this wrong?
I'd have to check into that. But this is lower than the current recalculated regional.
Yeah, but I'm saying from last year to this year.
I don't know off the top.
Okay.
I will say it probably
Okay.
increased.
Could you email me that?
I could get,
The question?
absolutely.
Okay. And the only thing that's not in here, which I know is being worked on, is I still would like to see a chart of how many staff members we have in this department, that department. I know we're working on it just so.
We're going to present it at the Personnel Committee tomorrow,
Okay,
and then
so-
we'll distribute it to all of the
I'll
committees
see it
as well.
before we vote on it.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
I think that is,
I have just a few questions. I don't know if you can hear me. Just on slide 9, just for clarification purposes, when we talk about the Abbott versus Burke and some of the macro level items, what are parent outreach activities exactly? What are those? Are those kind of like the babysitting that are being offered for some of the parent trainings, or what is a parent outreach activity?
Those are things like HECAC. Those are things like any of your parent advisory groups, your PTOs, your anything along those lines. We need to document and make sure that we present that we do have those partnerships. We also have to show that we host meetings. Doesn't mean that all parents have to go, but we do host meetings to support all of the federal grant programs and so on and so forth. So it's any of those advisory programs, PTOs, advisory committees, and so on and so forth.
Okay. And then I had a question. Has there been an increase in out-of-district placement students between, this current year and the past that you know of? And the only reason I asked is because you had mentioned that the IDEA covers for most of that, but IDEA has decreased in the past 3 years. So I'd like to know, why there's been that decrease, when I know that our special education program has been increasing as far as enrollment. But then also, if there's been a decrease, then does that mean that there's been a decrease in the number of students that are being placed out of district?
Okay, so you would like information as it relates to our out-of-district placements from last year to this year?
Yes.
And
just kind of an understanding of the reason behind IDEA and the reason why it's been decreasing for the past, for the past 3 years, the funding that we've been getting from them.
Okay, I could definitely
Okay.
get that to you, sure.
And then just on the slide 17, on the micro level, the special education goals, this is just something I feel like every year we always say this, and it's, expand the ABA program. But I guess maybe I just need to understand what that means. Does that mean that we're talking about bringing the ABA program into the high school? Are we bringing the ABA program to the middle school? The ABA program has remained steady for the past, since my son started at Wallace through the 5th grade. So this is just kind of a goal that we've been talking to, the director, Ms. Pope, about kind of bringing that into the high school or middle school, just kind of what that means. And then provide self-contained classrooms. I guess I'm just confused. We have self-contained classrooms already in our schools. So does that mean that we're increasing them? Are we going to have them for every grade? Do we not have them for every grade? Okay.
So to answer the first part of your question, to expand the autistic supplemental programs, it's not so much the actual classes that are being offered for children who are on the spectrum. It's more for the actual ABA services. So what that means is we are expanding ABA trained staff members to not only for us not only to offer those classes, but with behaviorists to actually collect data in other classrooms as well, not necessarily just the ABA classroom, because there are children that do present on the spectrum that aren't in the self-contained ABA classrooms. So we're seeing that in some of our LLD classes or MD classes as well. So it's more of that kind of expansion, because you're right, we've had pretty consistent number of classes, but the related services associated with autistic programming seems to be increasing and continuously increasing. So even next year, we have increased some of our external providers' time to provide behavioral supports, behavioral analyses, behavioral modification plans, and so on and so forth. So that is definitely happening. And that's tied directly to some of our self-contained classrooms, because although we have self-contained classrooms right now that are considered multi-aged MD classrooms, what we're seeing we really don't have are adequate LLD classrooms. So what's happening is we are providing the majority of services in the regular education classroom through inclusion, as opposed to addressing the language learning disabled child in a potential self-contained setting, not all day. So we don't want to take that child to the most restrictive environment, but to provide some sort of self-contained programming during the time that they might need it most. And right now, we're doing it just with a kind of a push-in model, as opposed to a focused, targeted process. And that's where we're seeing that we need to kind of improve upon in special services.
Okay, good. And then I think and then one more question on slide 19 on the security goals. Just curious. So does this include security? Is there training involved as far as security? I guess just as a parent, I just want to know what kind of training, our security goes to. Because it doesn't really say much in here, so it'd be helpful to know.
We can provide that.
Okay.
Mr. Moffett has provided a sign-up sheet for any member of the public to ask questions. Mr. Enrico, would you do me a favor here? Did anybody sign up? For the budget?
Second one for budget.
Separate one for budget.
You did a good job.
The first speaker for the budget hearing is Pat Waiters. Yes. Pat Waiters, yes.
This is, Ms. Waiters, this is questions on the budget.
No, I wrote them down already.
Okay.
Okay. No, I know I'm here at the budget, hearing.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm gonna go real slow because I marked precisely what I want to talk about. First, I want to say thank you, though, to Dr. Johnson. The programs you was mentioning about, like, with the show to help, like, because mentioning my son and a few other mothers I helped, with the reading and the math and the day after school programs is working. And I definitely like to see, I call kudos when kudos is due, and that money is being well spent. His grade level, that he was more comfortable with the test, with the state testing that they just took, and that thing you have in place there definitely worked out for them at the junior senior high school. And the increase in the charter schools, this increase in the charter schools here, in page, question number 14 for the charter school. Where it says Hoboken Charter School, is this K through 12? Oh, for the schools, the K through 12, the one on the high school?
You're asking about question 14, right?
Yes.
And it's about the enrollment. So this would just be the whole grade range, which I do believe Hoboken Charter School is a K-12, but it just would be our Hoboken students that attend. So.
Oh, so that's what I'm saying. My niece go there, but she don't live in Hoboken.
Correct.
You
Yeah,
get
so
what I'm
that would
saying?
not
So
be, yeah.
that's what I'm saying. She's not encountered in this number because she's from Jersey City. So this is just Hoboken students that's in the school?
Right, what you see in question 14
Yes.
is just Hoboken students. So if your niece is a resident of Jersey City, they would have a corresponding amount for her to attend Hoboken Charter School.
Right.
And they would be responsible to send that money to that charter school.
All right, thanks. That's the next question I was asking about this with the special need ones too here. You see where you put the special need program and where they send the child out? And his question was? It was $100,000 I seen. Be patient with me, Gary. Question number 5. It said, will the year's initiative school budget cause of property taxes? No, that's not it.
You're talking about question 5?
No, the one where the special needs student, you can get up to $100,000, right? For a special needs student, $100,000 if you have to like relocate them or if they come into our district.
Maybe 26.
It's 100.
26 on the last?
Yeah, question 26.
Oh,
The surplus could be used for that, right? Could you use surplus money for that, right? This says
Yes.
100,000 including an out-of-school district placement. So hypothetically, my son have to go out of the district, right? Do the school here, Hoboken, lose $100,000 because he got to go at another school?
Okay, well, 26 is basically more related to answering what can surplus be used for. So surplus that we have, that 2%, that $1.2 million number that we talked about, is on hand so that in the event someone moves in from out of town that maybe show up in September, we would then be able to budget for them, make an adjustment, and use some of that $1.2 million to offset the potential cost. I just try to illustrate it if the student did, and that might be a tuition amount plus related services. It's just a number that it could be used. It's just an example. It's not like it's available to us. The surplus is available to use to offset that, what I call unbudgeted event, right? Because right now we're not anticipating that individual moving in at this moment. It could be more than what we
Yeah, I
anticipate.
understand that. That's a perfect example. That's what I'm saying. A lot of moms, a couple of years ago, most of the special education students was in Wallace. And a lot of them went out of town or wherever, right? But I know some moms where their kids they bust now and out of town. Is this the same scenario where the ones that we lost in Wallace is being bust out now, special education students? We lost those.
Well, see, you use the term lost, and I
Well,
can't
they
agree
went
with
to another
that.
school, but are they still in the school system? But they just being offset with this money because they're going somewhere else?
No, well, again, if that student, right, we get a student who moves into town and they're at an existing out
They
of
live
district.
here and they got to go out of town.
Can I ask? I think what you're asking, if I'm not correct, if there is a student that we do have to send to a different school, it's for their need.
Right.
So it's not that we're just sending them out and losing
No,
money,
right,
it's
that's
what
what I'm
that
saying, they're
child
going to
needs, I
another
think.
school.
What that child needs, that program.
Right.
And that's why they're being sent there for
But
that
this money
program.
will go toward that, right?
But yes.
Okay, thanks,
Yeah,
that's what I'm
we would
saying.
pay
because
that.
Yeah, that's actually a good
Yeah.
thing. I'm saying because I know a few people, I just don't want to mention names, but
That's fine.
that was in this situation and that was good too. You know I'm gonna watch every penny. And facility uses. This is a perfect example. Remember we had a young man, a father wanted to do the swimming program, right? And they were saying because it's not Hoboken school kids or whatever, it turned into a big mess. Now, if somebody want to rent the facilities, is that money counted in this budget? For example, ZOG and these other outside entities that come and rent our field? Could you count that as the money that they pay as part of the budget?
Correct.
I didn't see that plugged in nowhere. That's why I was following with you
Yeah,
step by
it's not
step.
singled out. That's kind of considered to be kind of like a rent number that we do include. Yes.
Right.
So that
I
would
didn't
be
see
part of my assumptions and projections for rent includes.
Now, they're not charging us for the Little League, for Babe Ruth, I hope, because we played on there Sunday. So say, for instance, all of the Hoboken little kids that play ball, they don't charge us.
No,
Do
we don't charge them.
Oh, thank God.
No.
I was getting ready to get the boxing gloves. All right. See, you starting. All right. I think that's about it. Oh, no, the early childhood, and I'm finished. I'm wrapping
We
it
don't
up.
own a Little League field, Patton. Only the high school field.
I'm wrapping it up with the early childhood. One of the board members questioned, actually, Ms. Johnson, about the additional programs or whatever, but there's 3 major things that they didn't mention that stormy night when you came to us in the Housing Authority and helped us and educate us with registration and about the 3- and 4-year-old program in its entirety. When you mentioned that, that's what she was asking you about. Perfect. You forgot to mention that, and you came out of your way to come down there to us and educate them. That helped a lot because a lot of them was feeling left out with their kids at home in the house while other people was in the 3- and 4-year-old program. A qualification, I underlined it because I know when the last governor and he lived here, there was a big fight about Abbott District. It still says here, as required by current New Jersey Department of Education regulations, known as the former Abbott. So we still not considered Abbott? It says, we still considered Abbott. We still getting the money. But what I'm saying to you is we have such a big problem with that. Because my thing is you have somebody with a fixed income living in a housing authority, and you got somebody that can afford $1,000 a week nanny, and the kid in housing authority sitting home telling me they're on a waiting list. I always said it, even when I sat on this committee, I found this very disturbing. Abbott was, I don't know if you have a cutoff like limit, an income limit like we do with Section 8 and other programs, but with this program here, it's no base limit, like you can't exceed so many amount of money, because at the end of the day, Abbott was really designed for like, I guess, low income. To me, this is what I thought it was, correct me if I'm wrong, because we had a big problem with this here. And now you got people, I'm telling you, that can afford to buy daycare and stuff, and you got people that can barely eat, and they 3- and 4-year-old kids is being placed on a waiting list. So there's no type of requirement, since you got one here mandated by law, required by law, there's no current like amount that you can make to go in that school. Could you please just look into that?
Yeah, Ms. Waiters, unfortunately, we're not allowed to ask for financial information upon registration because the original Abbott program was supposed to blanket the entire city. Now with changing demographics, it puts us in a situation where that overall
Right, the truth be told, I'm with Governor Corzine on this,
But
but
we
the
have-
truth be told, millionaires, say it, it's a lot of millionaires here, when you see ultra luxury apartments, and they not complaining about the tax increases, we still gotta pick between eating and medication and our kids' education. It's definitely not fair. So as board members, when you run as trustees, these are the type of things that you should run on and look into, to make sure everybody is at least trying, when it comes down to state funding, well, of any kind, or the public school system, at least treat it equal, and make sure you don't forget about the ones, this is what's happening with charter schools here, the same exact thing. People that cannot really afford it now just because y'all brought it to light, now they knocking on doors, going to housing authorities saying, come to our school. But at least think about them too. The public school education is taking me back to Brown versus the Board of Ed. The public school education is designed for a duty-free education. Leave the politics out. So when you run for office, please look into these things like this. I sat on this board as a parent of, committee for 3 years on early childhood. I'm begging you, look into this. I see they get the money, I see they still going by a few state regulations, but look into this for me, please. And that's it, I'm finished. Thank you. I ain't gonna go over the stuff in the back because you pretty much covered it. Thank you, have a nice night.
You're welcome.
Any other members of the public?
Yeah, there are 2 more speakers,
Okay.
I think, for Melanie Takurlin. Did I get it right? Close?
Hi, Melanie Takarian, 819 Washington Street. So a couple things, just as it relates to kind of going over all of the wonderful programming that we have in our school district and will continue to have next year. We really appreciate the commitment and continued commitment to the arts, to adding AP capabilities, including finding supplemental programs, using online resources, supporting innovative after-school programs for all of our children and across the district and in all age levels. The college prep, the focus on STEM and mathematics, and maintaining our current staff levels. Really appreciate the focus. Number 1 priority for the budget is our kids' education, and so we appreciate the continued effort to create wonderful programming for our kids and creating a great educational environment for them. A couple questions that I just had. Any feedback or concerns about federal funding for the upcoming school year or beyond that you can address as it relates to potential changes in the Department of Education and leadership there? if you can. If you can't, that's fine. And then second, and again, this, you may also have no insights on this, but I was just curious about any insights about the increase in students in the charter schools, and if you have any specific understanding of why that would be happening. Thank you.
General funding?
Well, I'll carry that back, because I'm always looking to maximize other people's money for the taxpayers here in Hoboken. And I know other staff members feel the same way. I don't have anything as far as guidance from them. I know there's been a sit and wait approach for people, my peers. As I addressed in my presentation, we were hoping to have 100%. They're thinking 85%. The way the political environment is, I'm not reading the tea leaves or anything, but it sounds like it may be pretty good for what we had this year. So, but every time I speak with someone from Trenton, I'm always pushing for that as far as maintaining that level rather than reducing it over time, because it does complicate things for us here in Hoboken, because it's a blended amount that goes into supporting that school-based budget. So any type of alteration to that is a concern for me. Not only do we lose resources, but it also complicates things as far as distributing those resources across the schools. With that said, we'll take that back, and anything that develops, I'm sure we'll share here at a meeting in the future. I do not anticipate that much of a change the first year, maybe a couple years down the line, but not immediate. But, and I think the other one was the charter school enrollment. As far as data, we just get it from the state of New Jersey. There's not much more detail we get from them. We get a rough estimate of where they are in their grade range, and then they give us these weighted calculations, and then it's like 4 pages of calculations and coming up with different amounts to get that cost per pupil. So beyond that, as far as how they're projecting and what justifications they have, that's not something that the charter schools they don't justify to us, they justify to the department. We've called down to the department asking, like, hey, where are we as far as, it seems like these are high amounts, but beyond that, we really don't have much recourse as far as just asking for additional data, which really is all they give us, is that indication of the amount and the enrollment numbers.
I also think from a trend perspective, if you're looking at it a little more from just a rationale standpoint as opposed to a budgetary standpoint, there are some priorities even within charter schools, which include things like sibling preference, et cetera. So when charters first started, there was always a blend of children from the community of any charter school and those from outside, and as children from the outside of the community either age out of the program or leave inevitably, even when the charters do hit their maximum enrollment, you will begin to see some increases until it gets to a point where it almost maxes itself out. I think we hit that one pinnacle last year of the time in which almost the full enrollments hit their maximums, but what we saw this year is now the beginning of that turnover of children entering into kindergarten, and then also as children leave and open seats are available, they're first open to Hoboken residents as well as siblings, so that inevitably increases the enrollment.
And one more speaker?
Yeah, yes, Linda Kwok.
I just have a few questions. First of all, thank you very much for the presentation. That was really helpful. And I would just like to mention, we had Passport to Learning registration a couple weeks ago. We saw the new program is really amazing. We made some really good changes and still being very affordable to the people who don't qualify for reduced lunch. So I just want to thank everybody who worked really hard on that. Just a couple questions. One, just a general question, might be a stupid question. Can charter schools expand their grade sizes? For example, can they expand from 2 classrooms to 3? Is that possible? That's just one question. And then another question was, I know there are a lot of increases in the K to 6 numbers I think last time Dr. Johnson mentioned something around 200, and then this time it's something around 80. I just want to see how can we reconcile that? And as we go down, maybe 5 years, and the city is trying to develop the northwest corner of the city, and just overall everywhere in the city, do we have any long-term facility plans or expansion plans, or how do we budget for that? Because it seems like it's increasing a lot every year. And then how it does not impact the existing quality of the education in terms of class sizes and things like that. And then my last question is, I saw the tax increases. I know for myself personally, for the improvements in the quality of education we're getting, things like Project Lead the Way and after school, it seems very minimal, but it's not everybody in town like me has children in the district. So for some people, it may be a lot. I just have really just a thought I like to throw out there. As the city has all these developments going on all over the town, have we ever thought of to talk to the city about possibly taxing the developers or have them put a pot of money into the district? Just a thought. I don't know if it's possible or even legal, but just want to put it out there. Thank you.
Okay, so there's a few questions to start. Your first question regarding the expansion of the charters. So the charter applications do include the overall enrollment, and that overall enrollment stays intact unless the charter is amended. So that's that first piece of the question. The second part of your question had to do with enrollment and enrollment growth. So there's actual and there's projected, and then there's also predicted. So when we're doing the budget and you have to input the numbers into the system, you're inputting the numbers in the system based on demographic studies. The demographic studies are done in such a way that are a little unusual, and what I would consider to be unorthodox. However, demographers don't believe it's that way. But all of the statistics regarding school demographics are based on a particular methodology in which births are calculated by the number of children who are born in the city of Hoboken. So if you look at your friends, or if you look at the city of Hoboken itself, you do need to ask yourself how many children are born here in the Hoboken hospital. That's the first thing. When so many babies are actually born outside. So that makes our demographic trends a little bit difficult to calculate. So what we use internally, but Mr. Moffett has to use those projections when he's doing the budget. However, when we look at the trends, we are predicting, not necessarily accurately projecting right from the start, but we're predicting, and we're utilizing trends based on pre-K3 and pre-K4 numbers. So we kind of look at, a base number of pre-K4 students and what percentage of those students from any given year went from pre-K4 into kindergarten. If that percentage holds true, that's easy to predict. But our pre-K3 and pre-K4 numbers continue to increase. So even if we carry that percentage over from year to year, our population going into kindergarten continues to increase. And that's what we've been seeing over the last couple of years, which is why the number projected in the budget is a little bit different. And in terms of the developers, it doesn't usually happen in the form of taxing the developers. What it does come in the form of is providing revenue back to the district based upon some sort of an agreement with the developer. So a lot of the developments that we have right now, a new one that was agreed upon last summer, I believe, provides the Board of Education with a certain dollar figure for every child that ultimately enrolls in the district, and a flat number that we would be able to utilize for projected revenue moving forward when the project is complete. So that does happen, and it did happen with one of the last developments, and that's what we'll continue to watch.
And I just want to add on, it doesn't happen enough, in my opinion. I think that that developer wanted to build a little higher and wanted to get approvals and things like that, and he was kind of giving concessions. But certainly, there's not a lot of room in Hoboken anymore to build anymore. And I do hope with the room we have that more developers would go down that path.
Right.
Those,
Agreed.
for years, for the last 20 years, they made pilot payments from these developers, and the schools, districts, and the county got left out. All the money on their plans of them, before this last one, only went to the city, and we were left off, the school system and them. So the city said, the hell with the schools and the hell with them, when they were getting money for the developers, and they gave them tax breaks. And it hurt us and them. But now supposedly, I heard about this new development plan. I don't know if it's on every development or not, on their pilot plans. But for the most part, the schools were hurt by these pilot plans, by big people with money developing property that was very valuable.
Yes.
Everyone should.
All right, I think that concludes the budget hearing. Please. So we can hear.
We are spending about 24,000 per student, right? And the charter schools spend about 12,000 per student. Why do we have this difference? And wouldn't it be better if we sent all the students from the public schools to the charter schools? It would be, because apparently they're doing a better job.
Is that a question for?
That issue of the per pupil spending has come up over many, many, many years. It's a complex formula.
It doesn't include the percentage of programming for special education children, for ESL bilingual children, for homeless children is different here, particularly in Hoboken. I'm not necessarily sure in other communities, but definitely here in Hoboken. So those numbers increase the per pupil cost pretty dramatically.
Still, it's double. It's a lot.
Yeah.
That's the real number.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at our costs that are associated with supplemental programming for needs of children, you can definitely make a correlation, not necessarily a one-to-one correlation, but you could. And in addition to that, the state of New Jersey identifies the tuition per pupil at every level, and high school children have a higher tuition rate. So our only charter school in town that actually does service high school children is Hoboken Charter. So the high school programs, because of interscholastic athletics, because of specialized high school programs, shows a different tuition rate per high school child. So public schools inevitably, even in schools where you're looking at a comparison between a district that might only be a K through 8 public school district and that district that's a K through 12, K through 8 school districts almost always have a lower per pupil cost because they are not carrying a high school tuition per pupil rate along with it.
So that tuition is coming from the state?
Yes, the tuition, the per pupil cost comes from the projected per pupil cost will come from the state.
Okay, thanks.
So that concludes the budget hearing. We still have budget questions you can email questions
Right.
to Mr. Moffett. Anyone from the public is welcome to do that if anything comes up. Board members, of course, can call anytime. We'll move on to the agenda items that we have.
We have one speaker signed for agenda items only.
Okay.
That's Ms. Waiters. Did she leave?
She left.
She out in the hallway, or did she leave? Did someone see her leave?
I saw
I don't want to get in trouble. Okay. I was going to ask Dr. Johnson if you would, since we have no committee meetings last week, if you can just give us an overview. Does anybody have any questions about these?
Yes.
Okay, so why don't you just give us an overview?
Okay, so I sent an email to the board with a description of each of the items that you'll see that are presented. Few items that are on this agenda. The 5.01, they're all in the area of governance and personnel. 5.01 are the approval of our tenured staff members in the district, and that would be considered certificated staff members. So that's something that's done annually. I put in the update that all evaluations have been completed, scores analyzed, trend analysis, et cetera, and those individuals are being put forth for renewal. The next agenda will have the non-tenured certificated staff as well as all other non-certificated staff, so that we will get all of the renewals in within the May 15th required timeline. At our upcoming committee meetings, the non-tenured list will be provided to the Board of Education as well. We have a retirement, an early retirement on the agenda for Miss Judy Burrell. I believe we calculated her time in the district as 29 years and 9 months that she's put in. So she's put a lot of time and dedication into the district in many capacities, both in the classroom, I think with a lot of extracurricular activities as well as athletics. We have a approval of the transition from the district policy services from New Jersey school boards to Strauss-Esme. As that policy manual shifts from New Jersey School Board to Strauss-Esme, now what we will do is take each section of the policy manual, distribute each section where you could actually see it. It's on board docs. You can look at each of those policies, and the committees will break those policies up and do a review of the policies for any kind of modifications or anything like that that you might want to put forward. But this at least gives us the ability to take down the Strauss-Esme search box for policies, or the New Jersey School Board, and shift it to the Strauss-Esme search box. The calendar, the district calendar, typically we really don't usually put the revision of the district calendar on the board agenda, but it's on there. Specifically stated it when it was board approved that if there were 2 snow days used, it would be pushed, everything would be pushed back 1 day in the district. There was 1 built-in day, 2 days used, it would push everything back. But just for communication purposes, we thought it would be a good idea, put it on the agenda. We're also going to send home an additional letter as well as a new copy of the calendar to all parents as well. So those are, yep, and then those chapters.
Before questions, I'll need a motion for the consent agenda.
Motion.
That was Mr. Biancamano. Is there a second?
Second.
Irene, Ms. Sotomayor, a second. Mr. Biancamano, you had a question?
Yes. I guess starting with the approval of appointment of all tenured and administrators and staff and teachers. You mentioned this earlier, but there's no reduction in force, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Especially what happened in Bayonne last week, so just wanted to, especially, yeah, exactly. Little microphone issue. In terms of the district calendar, so we're just, it's just for clarification purposes, we're just letting parents know that these are the 2 snow days we took. We're not adding on days at the end of the year, correct? Because of those 2 snow days that were taken.
No, the original calendar that was board approved, in the notes on the bottom, it gives kind of a series of notes. One of the notes on it basically says for every day used. It says that the original Board of Education calendar for 2016, 2017 had one snow day built into the calendar, which we did. So if we didn't use any, we would have been off the Friday before Memorial Day weekend. But then underneath it, it said that if 2 snow days were used, that the calendar would be pushed back and the last day of school would move from the 21st to the 22nd, which is something that happens frequently. I just wanted to make sure that the board was aware of it, and that's why we put it on the agenda so that you could actually see it and so on and so forth. So we modified it, we modified the note, and it'll go home with all children and emailed out to parents, et cetera. It was e-blasted out in the weekly update as well.
Yeah, I was under the impression that we put 5 snow days in at the beginning of the year that we could take, but I guess I was wrong. Right, okay. In terms of the Strauss-Esma policy, switching over to the NJSBA, I'm just a little confused, Esme, excuse me. I'm just a little confused because we passed a resolution, I believe a year ago, saying that we were going to move the policies over. And then I read your note that was sent out to the board, and you mentioned that it was, we're finishing, I guess, moving the policies from the NJSBA to Strauss-Esme. And so what is this resolution doing tonight? Have we completely moved the policies over from NJSBA to Strauss-Esme, or?
So what the board actually adopted was the use of Strauss-Esme as the provider. So now what we're doing is we're moving the policies, or else we would have to put on the agenda one policy at a time. So typically when I see districts move from New Jersey school boards to Strauss-Esme or vice versa, what they'll do is they'll first adopt the contract or the service, then they'll move to the transition of it. And between the time the board adopted it till now, Strauss-Esme actually did the work of transitioning all the policies from paper to their digital system, and also went through every single one of the policies and regulations and updated them to be consistent with any new legislation that was passed to ensure that they're all legislatively up to date. Not necessarily changing any of our content, but doing that. And then what they recommend is, once the board does this, that we then, as a group, a body, go back and do a review of every single one of the policies to see if we want to make any additional changes. And if we do, then we move forward as a first reading and a second reading for the policies.
Understood. And this is just policy driven, correct? I mean, we're still all members of the New Jersey School Boards Association.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm still going to attend the
Yes.
meetings and things like that.
Yes.
Okay, got
Yes,
it.
100%. It's only a policy service.
Understood. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Quick question. 501 and 502. That means, last year we received the list with most of the same teachers. Are there any, like each year, we stop because they're tenured already, or you have to do that every year? Every year. And does it show if anyone new, like, that's gonna be tenured by next year? Or?
So the list of
That reads the
Okay,
new requirement.
that's a great question. So you will see that on the next agenda with the list of non-tenured teachers. So anyone who will be renewed for next year that will earn tenure as a result of that renewal, you'll see a star next to their,
Okay.
it'll be asterisk next to their name, so you'll be able to see that.
So no one on this is new, that we just
That's
received,
correct.
this is all that
Correct.
had this tenured already?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
that's what I, thank you.
Any questions? Then I think we can call the roll.
Ms. Angley?
Yes.
Mr. Biancamano?
Aye.
Mr. Lara?
Yes.
Ms. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Madigan?
Yes,
Mr. McNamara?
Yes.
Ms. Sobolov?
Yes.
And Mr. Kleffeld?
Yes. That motion passes. Public comments on non-agenda items.
Ms. Waiters is signed for the general public comments. I don't see her back. I do have someone indicating from,
Please.
Hi,
Hi, Melanie Tzakarian, 819 Washington. Just a reminder that we have our wonderful all-district play coming up, Peter Pan, on May 19th, 20th, and 21st. So invite the board to please come out and get your tickets because they're selling fast. And for the board and the public, please join us.
And it's one show per day?
One show per day. So
And the
there's-
Sunday show's at 2 p.m., correct?
The both weekend show, Saturday and Sunday are at 2 p.m.
Oh, no, there's not a
There's a
Saturday.
7 p.m. on Friday.
Gotcha.
Right, yeah. So hope we see all of you and the public as well. It's going to be a wonderful show with lots of exciting acrobatics or flying and Peter Pan in the air. So hope you'll come out and enjoy it. Thank you.
They are being sold online, the tickets. So yeah, they are selling out
There are
fast.
online
Yeah.
tickets, but they are selling fast. I mean,
Yeah.
if there's seats available, you can get them that day, but
Get them soon.
get them while they last. Hot tickets.
Indulge me for 1 minute. Mr. Madigan, Ms. Sobolov, I dropped the ball on something. She
Oh, yeah.
asked me about, because of a scheduling conflict on
Wednesdays and
on
Fridays.
Wednesdays that it's scheduled for the next facilities committee. She can either, if we're going to continue on that schedule, she needs to
I can't do
get
it,
off that
yeah.
committee, or if we can accommodate a different day, because we're trying to accommodate your schedule with the noon
Right.
thing. But I dropped the ball on that tomorrow. We have a facilities committee, so while we have all the board members here, rather than the whole email thing, we'll have a vacancy. Do you want to see if there's anybody available?
I think Sharon could come back in for tomorrow.
Is anybody else interested?
Unless you just want to stay for 15 minutes after and have it tonight. 12 o'clock tomorrow.
Yeah, I can't.
Unless anyone wants it tonight for 15 minutes.
Right.
No?
No,
No, that would be
Mr. Callaghan?
unfair to Mr. Callaghan.
I don't think it's one of you and Mrs.
Right.
Johnson. Do you just want it tonight?
Ms. Angler, you're going to do it tomorrow?
I have a conflict,
Oh.
but I can.
Because Sheila's coming in Sharon's place at first.
Oh, okay.
No, but then Irene's
I
going
see,
to
I see what
going to
you're
take
saying, okay.
Irene's back.
but if we can make it a different day or later on that Wednesday, I can come, but that Wednesday at that time I
I
can't.
have a game after school.
It's probably not a huge agenda, is it? End of year? Yeah. Isn't it?
Now, is everyone okay who could come?
Yeah.
But then I would have to,
Okay. Sheila, you can show. I got it.
Sheila, you're
You
going to
can
be
go.
dumped then, because Sharon's here.
Right,
and
that's a nice
Irene,
solution.
you're going to stay tonight?
Yes, yeah, but if I'm not going to be on that committee, if somebody else wants it, they can take it tonight.
Well, we'll figure that out longer term.
Okay. So tonight, we're going to meet right there.
Thank you.
Didn't expect that at the end of the meeting.
There you go.
We're meeting again next Tuesday
Yes.
for a regular meeting and vote on the budget. Mr. Madigan?
I'll just figure it out this week, and I'll check with you.
Please,
and
okay.
Mr. Callaghan.
Okay.
And Dr. Johnson on that for next month.
All right.
Okay?
So we'll see you then. Motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
So Irene, you're going to stay tonight?
Yeah, we can only,
Sheila,
It's going to be a short meeting.